Hi, and welcome to Valley Prep Tutoring. So we're going to talk today about illusions. I didn't say illusions, like things you can't see, but allusions. And allusions are an important strategy that many authors use, referring back to previous famous literature that the author is assuming that you as a reader know. Well, this is all perfectly well and good as long as you've read the things they're referring to, but if not, you're at a disadvantage in understanding really what the author's intention was. So I thought I'd introduce you today to three primary types of allusions that occur in literature. And the three are Shakespeare, Bible, and mythology, both Greek and other types of mythology. Let's start off by talking about Shakespeare today. Well, presumably you've been introduced to Shakespeare and you are familiar with many of his plays. Well, if you've not read them in detail, you may be missing out on things that are actually being referred to in other famous plays, novels, and so on. I'm going to show you this lovely picture of Romeo and Juliet. This is a very famous scene. The balcony scene, Act 3, Scene 5. And we know that Romeo has come against his own best interest, really, because he would be probably thrown out or killed if he were discovered by the Capulets that he's basically stalking outside the bedroom window of this girl that he's met at this party. Now, when we think about what does this allusion do, well, really this is the allusion to an archetypal story of star-crossed lovers. And in fact, that's the phrase that Shakespeare uses in his prologue to Romeo and Juliet, where he talks about the fact that they are star-crossed lovers, meaning they were born under the astrological stars that didn't allow them to bring their love to full fruition, although they love each other even into death. And we're told at the beginning of that story that a pair of star-crossed lovers are going to take their lives. There's no mystery, there's no spoiler alert with Shakespeare. He tells you right up front what's about to happen in the story. So this archetype can be seen in a lot of other stories. And if you start thinking about your favorite movies, your favorite plays, one that immediately comes to my mind is West Side Story, the story of Tony and Maria. Now this is set in New York City, and it's two gangs instead of two families living in Verona, Italy. But the idea of a male and a female who are madly in love that are being kept apart by other people of their influence in their lives is archetypal, and we see that, and it doesn't even have to be male and female. You can see that in all kinds of stories where people are being pulled apart by societal pressures. So it's helpful to be able to recognize that archetype. A second archetype we can talk about are any images from the Bible. We'll talk today about Adam and Eve, and we're going to put up a nice image for you here of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, here's where I just want to remind you that the Bible, although it's a religious book, is also something that needs to be considered as literature. So regardless of your faith traditions, of your family, or your personal beliefs, it's in your best interest to be knowledgeable about the stories that populate that text, because many of them are referred to in the types of literature you're going to be expected to read and understand on the high school and college level. So whether it's Noah's flood, or Moses and Pharaoh, or something from the New Testament, many allusions in modern literature refer to things like baptism, the idea of communion, the idea of suffering for one's sins, or crucifixion, all of the iconography of the Christian narrative as well as the Judeo portion of the Bible. Very important to understand these. So Adam and Eve, of course, hopefully you know the story of the apple, although technically it's not really an apple. Did you know that? Yeah, so you got to read the text. It doesn't say apple in the Old Testament. It does say the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we can call it an apple just to keep it simple. But to understand the idea of forbidden fruit, right? Well, this is a motif that occurs again and again in literature. Forbidden fruit. What's the forbidden fruit? Ooh, kind of makes you go, something is forbidden here. And of course, we know the characters in literature throughout the entire canonized history of the written word are being tempted by things that are forbidden to them, things that have been separated from them. And the idea of being expelled from paradise is something that certainly comes up again and again as well. I'm thinking of Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean. I don't know why. East of Eden. A lot of famous stories that Hollywood is, and it's interesting because we're in LA as we're talking to you today, Hollywood is smart. Hollywood knows where to borrow from. Hollywood borrows a lot from Shakespeare, the Bible, and mythology, trust me. So that brings us to our final category for allusions. And mythology is something that obviously the Greeks don't own. There are mythologies that happen in cultures all over the world and throughout history. But the Greek myths are particularly used as things that get referred to. And the story of Cronus and Rhea and little baby Zeus in this image that we're going to share with you now is really an interesting one, because the fear of a parent, any parent, male or female, being usurped by the power of their younger version of themselves, their child, as they come of age, is something that appears again and again. I even think of the fairy tales. I'm thinking in particular of a movie I just saw recently, which was Snow White and the Huntsman. And again, even though it's a stepmother, the evil stepmother, and she's very jealous of the beauty of Snow White and wants to have her killed in order to maintain her own beauty, we can see echoes of this Greek story in that story. The idea of not wanting to be usurped. So in this famous myth, it's really interesting because, well, it's a little different than what happens in that movie, but the parallel is that there's trickery involved, right? Rhea finds out that Cronus is going to swallow, literally ingest, her baby, because he's eaten all of the brothers and sisters. In fact, he's often depicted with a belly full of little baby faces, almost as if he's pregnant with the children because he's eaten them. What a horrific image. She brings a swaddling cloth here, and she's bringing him what is actually a stone, right? And he's kind of, I guess, not too bright, and Cronus swallows the stone thinking, ha, that's my baby Zeus. But meanwhile, Zeus is, taken off out into the meadow and it's being raised by nymphs or something out in the woods. So Zeus, of course, comes of age, and as we all know, he's Zeus, he's the king of Mount Olympus, and he goes on to great glory, and Cronus is indeed disposed. So all of this is so relevant, and you're never going to be able to read everything. I, even as an English teacher for many years, have just a list of books I'm still trying to get to. So life is filled with opportunities to read wonderful novels, wonderful plays, things that are of import. But nothing could be more important than having the foundational pieces that you need. So please consider your Shakespeare and your Bible and your mythology as sort of building blocks, foundational pieces that you really need to get into place in order to fully appreciate all the other authors that you'll be reading in your high school and college careers. We hope you enjoy reading as much as we do here. All right, take it easy. We'll talk to you soon.